everyone, and welcome to Not Just Numbers, Honest Conversations with a Financial Advisor and Lawyer. I am Madison Demora, and I am here with Mike Gary. Mike is a financial advisor and a CFP practitioner and the founder and the CEO of Yardley Wealth Management. He is also an estate planning lawyer, and his law firm is Yardley Estate Planning. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Madison, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
I mean, it's
Very
Monday, but
good.
it's a beautiful day. So
Exactly. Yep.
there's that.
Yep. All right. So before we get into today's topic of discussion, we received some fan mail over the weekend from one of our listeners in Michigan. All right, Mike. So here is what our listeners are asking. I just listened to the episode on long-term care insurance. Is there any rule of thumb for the threshold of your nest egg value that would allow you to pay for long-term care without purchasing long-term care insurance? For example, if you and your spouse have 3+ million nest egg. Thanks.
Well, it's a great question, Madison. And I think people will disagree and have differences of opinion on what is appropriate here. So I think, I've seen people with long-term care. I joke that I'm Switzerland, right? I see people who have had great experiences and people who have had what they tell us are terrible experiences, often with the same long-term care insurance company. So I think this is a situation where you need to look at what your finances are. If you're interested in it, talk to an insurance agent or broker, get some quotes on what might be acceptable levels of insurance, and see if the premium seems worth it to you. The thing about long-term care insurance is, you don't know whether you're going to need it or not, right? Most more 2/3 of people wind up having some type of stay in a nursing home or assisted living facility, and the average stay is about 400 days. And so it might make sense for some people to get insurance, and other people might decide it's not for them. With a $3 million nest egg, they could last a long time without going through that. And it's a case where long-term care insurance isn't going to cover all of the costs unless you pay a really big amount in premium, because you make choices as to how much your coverage you're going to have per day, how long it would be, how long do you have to be in the home before the insurance kicks in, whether it adjusts for inflation or not. There's a lot of complicated decisions in it. So I think it's best, if people are thinking about it, they contact an agent or two or a broker or two, maybe run some numbers and see if they think it makes sense for them. And if they're not sure, run it by somebody else, maybe a financial planner or a loved one or their accountant or somebody.
Okay.
Sorry, there's no bright line answer that if you have X amount, then you should definitely get it or definitely not get it. It's a
Yeah.
complicated decision, and people have to do what they think is best.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we talk about that on the podcast all the time. What's good for someone else is a different situation, and it could be totally different for you. It could be great for them and not so great for you. So
Yep.
all
Yep.
comes down what goes best with your plan.
Yeah. Great answer.
All right. So today, moving on, today's topic of discussion, we are going to discuss a article from the Wall Street Journal, and it is titled, "What Should You Do with Your 401k When You Retire?" And this is by Olivia Mitchell, and the article will be in the description below. All right, Mike, so here's the summary. The article discusses the financial decisions retirees face regarding their 401k plans, whether to roll over their savings into an individual retirement account, IRA, or leave the funds in their employee-sponsored 401k. Rolling over to an IRA offers benefits like more investment options, including ETFs and unconventional assets, account consolidation, and flexible payouts. However, fees can be higher, and some advisors may steer clients away from lifetime income products. Leaving money in a 401k often results in lower cost and better fiduciary protections. as employer-sponsored plans typically offer lower investment fees and legal safeguards. Additionally, 401k funds are protected from bankruptcy claims and allow penalty-free withdrawals at age 55, unlike IRAs, which allows this at 59 and a half. Simplicity and reduced decision making make 401ks appealing to those less financially literate. Other factors like estate planning, beneficiary rules, and the size of the retirement account also play crucial roles. In the end, the best choice depends on an individual's financial literacy, account size, and the relative cost of each option. All right,
Great
Mike.
summary.
So,
Thank you.
of course. So, what are the primary benefits of rolling over a 401k into an IRA, and how do they compare to keeping the money in a 401k plan?
Sure. I think the primary benefits of rolling a 401k into your IRA is you get the greater choice of the available investment options in your IRA and also simplicity. A lot of people now have many, many accounts, 401ks from different jobs. So when people come to us and we start to manage their accounts for them, they often have 3, 5, 7 different 401ks, maybe more, and they could have probably rolled those 401ks into their current 401k when they left one job, or they could have each time they left a job rolled it into an IRA. But people aren't really sure what to do often, and so they leave their 401ks there. I don't think it's always a conscious choice. It's always like, hey, I'm getting a new job, I have all this stuff to do, and then the 401k is just there, and the old employer doesn't make them take it out, so it stays there. The relative so the relative benefits of the IRA is you can invest in anything you want, and you can streamline, have like one IRA for pre-tax monies. The benefits of the 401k primarily are you can have some cheaper investment options, and there can be greater protection from creditors than an IRA, although it's not as much as she indicates in this article, and we'll get to that later.
Okay. Why do some retirees choose to leave their money in a 401k plan after retirement, and what advantages does this decision offer?
So I think a lot of times they do it because they're comfortable with where they worked. They've been using the 401k maybe for years, and so they know what the investment options are, and they're happy with them. And they know how to log in easily enough. They know what they're doing. Um, and in financial areas, inertia is a big, big thing. Once people get set in what they do, they don't really like to change. So I think those are the main reasons people keep their 401ks with their old employers.
Okay. What role do fees and cost play in the decision to roll over a 401k to an IRA or leave it in an employer plan?
So, the really 401ks are, for the most part, much better managed than they were 20 or 30 years ago. I think they do a much better job of having around a good lineup of available funds, like index options, target date options, and especially among larger employers, they get really good costs. So they keep the cost pretty low on those. But in an IRA, you could buy ETFs that are the lowest cost you could get. So there's really not a big difference cost-wise anymore between 401ks and IRAs.
Okay. How do fiduciary protections differ between 401k plans and IRAs, and why is this an important consideration for retirees?
Okay. So one of the things that this lady wrote in the article is that 401ks are protected from creditors by ERISA, which is the law, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of the early 1970s. And that is true. However, most states also protect IRAs from creditors. So Pennsylvania and New Jersey also protect the majority of your IRAs from creditors. There are some exceptions. So inherited IRAs don't count in that, but the IRAs that you've put together will have generally the same protections as 401ks. So she said there was a difference in the article, but I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, but a simple Google search and the history that we've known over the years would show that that's not the case. Um, so maybe slightly better or all-encompassing protections in 401ks, but you get like 99% of protection in IRAs, at least in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. In other states, it could be very different. Um, but most of our listeners are in PA and New Jersey.
Yeah. All right. So, what impact can retirement saving decisions have on estate planning, particularly when comparing IRAs to 401k plans?
Well, one of the things that she mentioned in the article is in the 401k plan, a lot of places, she said that you need to have your spouse has to inherit it 50% of it or more. I didn't know that was a thing, and I didn't look that to see if that was, but I know in 403b plans that is often the case. Like if you want to roll over an IRA, roll it to an IRA, even your spouse has to agree because they're losing some protection. But in an IRA, you can name whoever you want. You're not limited to the choice in the 401k. And for some people, that might be important, right? Like, what if your spouse has enough and you want to leave money to your kids instead, or your grandkids, or your charity, whoever or whatever is important to you?
Yeah. So, for retirees who are not financially literate, what challenges might they face when managing an IRA versus staying in a 401k plan?
Sure. If you're not really financially literate and you have a 401k and you know how to log in and you know what the options are, it's all kind of set up there for you. If instead you roll it to an IRA and you have the whole world at your feet and you can invest in whatever you want, yeah, that could be a little bit scary and maybe you would make some bad decisions. So if you really don't know what to do or what you're doing and you don't want to pay for any kind of advice, then sticking to your 401k might be the right answer for you.
Yep. All right. So, what role does access to annuities play in the decision to choose an IRA or a 401k for retirement?
So in this article, what she mentioned was that most 401ks don't offer annuity options, although the Secure Act 2.0 now allows them. And so gradually we'll see them filter out into the 401k space. Like the Roth 401k option, it took a few years for it to become like the normal thing that's available. And in IRAs, you could buy annuities.
All right. So, how does the ability to withdraw money earlier from a 401k starting at age 55 compare with the flexibility of IRAs, which impose penalties for withdrawals before age 59 and a half?
Sure. So if you can take money out of your 401k at 55, and if you just take a normal distribution from your IRA, you have to wait till you're 59 and a half. There are a couple of caveats here, though. So your 401k provider may limit how often you can make distributions. There may be some sort of limitations on what you do. Whereas in an IRA, there just aren't going to be. You could take a little bit of money out every day if you want to. In terms of the allowing the distributions, one thing she did not point out in this article, and we'll get to some other oversights later, is from your IRA, you can take distributions without penalty before 59 and a half, but you have to use something called Rule 72T. 72T is a little exception. You don't see it too much anymore, but it used to be common. As long as you could start withdrawing early, but you have to take substantially equal periodic payments. There's three different ways you could figure out how to calculate those payments, and you have to take those payments for 5 years. But so if you're going to retire and your money's all in an IRA and you're 57, you can figure out how to do that without paying a tax penalty. or you could pay somebody to figure out how to do that without taking a tax penalty. So I'm surprised that she didn't mention that in the article.
Okay. All right, Mike. So we spoke a little bit before we started recording today. So there was a few things that you said that were missing or
Yeah,
not.
so
Yeah.
like you can't look, this is complicated. And but when I reread the article this morning, I reminded me that in addition to it being a big decision people have to make, whether to roll their 401k to an IRA, one of the bigger ones that people take upon retirement, the other thing is there's a lot of stuff in here that's either factually inaccurate or it leaves stuff out. And this was written by a woman who's a professor at Penn. She went to Harvard. She has a PhD. She has all kinds of accolades, and she's a big proponent of financial literacy. And there's a lot of stuff in here that just doesn't seem right. And well, let's go through them. Like one of
Yeah.
the considerations she says is that an additional consideration is that some financial advisors might be biased against offering lifetime income products in IRAs when they can earn higher commissions by steering clients away from annuities. That just is a non sequitur to me. That makes no sense to me. Um, Annuities. So maybe she meant like immediate annuities, or maybe she meant fee only advisors would steer people away from annuities. But as we've said on this podcast in most of the episodes, too many people buy annuities that shouldn't, based on their situation, and really don't understand the rules. So her saying that advisors would be biased against annuities just doesn't strike me as right. Another thing she says is employer-sponsored 401k plans tend to offer less costly pricing on investments and advice compared with IRAs. So for this, that would be a reason to use a 401k. Although earlier in the article, she said 401ks mostly don't offer ETFs, which is true, but IRAs, you could buy ETFs, and ETFs tend to be cheaper than mutual funds. So in terms of the products, you can buy really cheap products in both places. And I would say if you're given a choice of the cheapest products in your 401k versus the cheapest products in the investment universe, the IRA would have some cheaper products. It just would. That's not saying that's the only thing you need to consider or that's like the most important thing, but the lower cost is important. The other thing she says is advice, less costly advice. I don't know that you get advice on how you should invest your 401k from your 401k provider. They offer all sorts of education. There's great tools in most 401ks. They have websites you could sign up to learn about all kinds of things. They're not going to tell you what to buy in your 401k, and they are not going to manage it for you. So that got me to like the next paragraph where she says, it'll cost you 0.2% in an IRA versus 1%. I mean, in a 401k, 0.2% or 0.25% for a fully diversified portfolio versus like 1% in an IRA. Well, she's comparing the price of the products in the 401k with the advice that an RIA or a financial advisor would provide. They're not the same thing. You can't buy that advice in the 401k. Like it's not an apples to apples comparison, right? That just doesn't make any sense. All right. And then two paragraphs later, she says in 401ks, you could get target date funds so you don't have to make active decisions and your account can get gradually more conservative over time. Guess what? You could buy a target date fund in an IRA. And the difference is in the 401k, you could buy the target date funds by the provider in your 401k. In your IRA, you could buy any target date fund you want. So the target date fund is not an advantage of a 401k. It says another point is that 401k, large employers are holding on to 401ks when people leave and encouraging them to stay because they want economies of scale. And they say larger companies, she says larger companies in particular can negotiate lower fees from record keepers and money managers, something IRA investors are not likely to do on their own. That's first part of that is true. That, bigger plans can get lower fees on record keepers and money managers. IRAs don't need record keepers, so that's not an advantage. And then money managers, she's talking again about the products. So your Apple 401k probably has really cheap investment costs. And the fund managers probably don't charge a whole lot, right? Because it's a giant 401k plan. Again, there are ETFs out in the universe that are 2 or 3 basis points, right? So like there's no great savings there. Maybe some of the plan, maybe some of the investments in the plan are cheaper in the plan than they are by buying it yourself at Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, but I doubt it. And if it is, it will be a minuscule difference on products that are already really cheap, already really cheap. And again, you're not going to get advice. She talks about money managers, like you can't get advice in that 401k. Then she says a related factor is that 401k assets are legally protected from bankruptcy claims while IRA money isn't. This should be an important consideration for anyone potentially facing a financial setback in later life. So we said earlier in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and I think in most states, they are protected.
Mhm.
Maybe not entirely protected like the 401k, but mostly protected. We go to the next thing, talks about withdrawing before 59 and a half. And as we said before, the 72T is an exception.
Yep.
And then she does the very last thing she says is the benefit of a 401k in if you are working for an employer and you want to continue working in your 70s when you're at the required minimum distribution age, you don't have to take required minimum distributions from your 401k if you're still working and you're not a 5% or more owner of the place, right? So Madison, so if you were working here and you're 75, you don't have to take required minimum distributions because you're not a
Yep.
5% owner.
Yep.
I would have to take required minimum distributions because I am a 5% owner. So if you do work for a company that you don't own, 401k would have the benefit of allowing you to continue working, saving, and not having to take the required minimum distribution out. I don't know how often that exception is used because I don't think there's tons of people that are still working at 72 or 73. But there are. I mean, I'm sure there are some. So yeah, so that's it. Um,
Yeah.
I went on this rant here because this stuff is complicated, and there are like 7 or 8 instances here where um, either the advice is really not great or it doesn't include some big factors. And so I understand why people get frustrated with this area because, this is the Wall Street Journal, a great source for news. Um, yeah, it shouldn't be that way. Now, I
Yeah.
did notice that there's a difference between this online version and the paper one. I initially cut the paper one out, handed it to you because it's an important question when what you do with your 401k when you retire.
Yeah.
And there are 1 or 2 things that I thought were a little bit off. But the online version that's still up there, we printed it out today, has a lot of stuff that's not really accurate.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And like you said, I could totally see it being frustrating. I mean, that's probably one of the most popular questions you get when someone comes in is, I have a 401k, I'm retiring soon. What should I do? That has
Yeah.
to be one of the most popular questions you get. And then
Yep. We get it all the time.
yeah, and then you read an article in the Wall Street Journal and it's kind of
Yeah.
misleading, or like you said, it's not really comparing the apples to apples. I could see how it could be frustrating
Sure.
for some.
Sure. And I may have when I said people have like 357, I may have undercounted, right? Like so we have
Yeah.
a new client who sent an email this morning that she did find one old 401k that she had thought she had forgotten about, and then she just found another one over the weekend, right? And so she is not at retirement age yet. And she has 5, including her current one. So she has
Yeah.
4 old ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's more than a decade away from retirement. So
Yeah.
who knows how many she would have, if she didn't hire us by
Yeah.
59 and a half.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add to this episode, Mike?
No, no. Thank you so much for the questions and allowing me to go on that little bit of a rant. It is a good question, and like, I think that most people's circumstances, like, it depends, like a lot of this stuff. I
Yeah.
think that she made some good points in that if you're not really financially literate, um, the 401k can be an easier option, a little bit less daunting. That's totally true. I don't want to like totally trash this lady because she
Yeah.
did lay out a lot of good stuff, but I was surprised at how many things weren't really right.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Mike. Well, thank you for everything. Thank you for all the information. And I really hope that this helps guide some people in the right direction. So, for more information on Yardley Wealth Management or Yardley Estate Planning, you could visit our websites at yardleywealth.net and yardleyestate.net. You can also follow us on socials at Yardley Wealth Management. Don't forget to smash the like button if you enjoyed this episode. This podcast has been produced by Madison Demora and Mike Gary with technical and artistic help from Poe Productions.